Hi, friends. I'm Dana Lewison, therapist and founder of the Empowerment Collective.
And I'm Dr. Roshni Patel. I'm a board certified gynecologist and the physician founder of Luminate Gynecology.
Today, we are talking about hormones. If you've ever said, I don't feel like myself, you are not alone. Mood changes are real and they are biological. We are going to explore them today. And then we're going to give you our take two of how to cope with them when they kind of feel all over the place and out of control. So let's get into it.
Yep. Dana, I feel like we're really lucky because we get to have these conversations all the time, right, with our patients. And I think we both hear a lot of the same messages, like patients saying that they feel more anxious or more irritable
Right.
or that they're crying more easily or that their patience is completely gone. And then the question we're often left with is, like, is this hormonal? Is this emotional? Is this both? Right? Like we hear that all the time.
Yeah, and I think the short answer here is that it is often both. That it doesn't make it, imaginary. It's not in our head, and we have to be careful here because just like our mood, our hormones are also shaped by our sleep, our stress, what's happening in our life. So, as the doctor here, help us understand what are hormones.
Great question. Great topic to dive into. So hormones, like at a very high level, are chemical messengers. They're molecules that move through our body in through our bloodstream, and they can affect basically any and every organ, right? Including the brain. Hormones play a major role in a lot of the physiologic processes and the reactions that our body undertakes, things like your metabolism, reproduction. Hormones also play an important role and can inform us or tell us, when we need to sleep, when we feel hungry, when we feel full, how we respond to stress, how our brain will process an emotion that we're feeling. So hormones really cover like a wide range of ground. And hormones now, the conversations become appreciating a little bit more how impactful individual hormones can be, right? Specifically the hormone like estrogen. She is so famous in my world, in your world too,
Yes.
probably. And we can now appreciate that estrogen receptors are widely distributed through the body. Yes, even in the brain, especially in parts of the brain that can play a role in mood regulation. And we know that mood symptoms that women may experience in menopause or perimenopause can be related to large swings or big fluctuations
Yeah.
in estrogen levels. The nitty gritty mechanism isn't quite teased out yet, but I think we're working on it. This knowledge has kind of been around in different ways, right? We've known that in the menstrual cycle, estrogen levels fluctuate, progesterone levels fluctuate. But some women are just a little bit more symptomatic than others, depending on where they are in their cycle.
So if your mood feels different during a hormonal transition, it doesn't mean that you are, making it up. It just means that your brain and your body are changing, they're adapting. And some of us feel it more than others. Some of us are more sensitive to those hormonal fluctuations, and it can be really uncomfortable. And there's that normal PMS that we feel. And then there's some people that have even, PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, where the brain is so extra sensitive to those hormonal changes that symptoms can really interfere with daily life functioning. And unfortunately, it's often missed because doctors will say it's, just bad PMS. And I think women are also a bit afraid to report everything that they're feeling because they've either been gaslit or because sometimes the symptoms sound scary. They're minimizing the rage that they might be feeling or all of that dysphoria that they're feeling during that time. So, anyway, it goes beyond the normal PMS. So, I do want to be clear here that, if a doctor does say that it is in your head, I mean, yes, it is in your head, but it's hormonal and that you can be treated for it, that it is real. There are real symptoms happening and you can feel that. You can feel those tiny little changes as hormones fluctuate.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a gynecologist, I get to focus sometimes, when patients do disclose their symptoms and we're talking about them, this dimension of mood health. And sometimes there's interventions that I can utilize. And then sometimes I refer them out to Dana because there is an element of not just medical therapy, other forms of interventions that can really help patients experiencing hormonal imbalances.
Right. And there's other hormones as well. We spoke for a moment about estrogen, but talk to us more. Tell us more about estrogen and the other
And the other
hormones
big
that,
players, there's
yeah,
right? We talked a little bit about estrogen, there's progesterone, there's cortisol, and testosterone, right? Testosterone's getting a lot of hype lately. And we talked about how estrogen plays such an important role in many parts of the body. Estrogen has a role in the brain and how we
yeah,
can regulate our moods. Estrogen also has this interplay with serotonin, dopamine, those guys, that class of mood hormones and neurotransmitters are also very important. And some people, we touched on this before, but those even small fluctuations can manifest in big feelings or big symptoms. And it's not always the same. And one of the things that we know is right before a woman experiences a menstrual period or when she's in a moment of large hormonal fluctuations, like postpartum or during breastfeeding or
right, right.
your mood can sometimes feel even more reactive or unpredictable. And the fluctuations, I think, matter a little bit more than the absolute levels or like the number if you had a lab test. Progesterone, on the flip side, is kind of thought of to be this calming hormone, something that can promote a little bit more of like relaxation or sleep, even. And name gives it away. It's progesterone, it's progestation. This is the hormone that's really a big player. If a woman decides to have a pregnancy and helps the pregnancy develop and mature. But the nuance is that progesterone is not calming for everyone. So for a patient taking, a medication that has progesterone in it, or she's on menopause therapy and there's a progesterone component, not every woman is going to have that increased sleep drive or something like that because she's taking a form of progesterone.
Yeah.
Some women experience other symptoms with progesterone, like, fatigue or even brain fog or some emotional sensitivity. And classically, a patient will say something like, the second half of the cycle, I'm more tearful or I'm more impatient. That reads to me like it's a more of a progesterone issue. Let's kind of maybe tackle that.
I think that's super important. And that this is why when women say in general, like, oh, this is the answer, or
Mhm.
you have to do HRT, or you want to be on this birth control, or an IUD is the answer. It's not one size fits all,
Absolutely.
because just because a certain amount of progesterone is good for one person isn't for someone else. Mirena IUD with the progesterone amount is might be wonderful for one person, and for someone else could make them ragey and have hormonal acne.
Yeah.
So you have to talk to your doctor. Again, you want to find your doctor who you can trust and then talk about those symptoms and make sure that if you are, like you said, weepy at the end of your cycle, okay, have a doctor who understands why that might be, what hormone might be, being activated, and help you understand what's going on in your body. I think it's really important to be aware and try and understand all of that instead of just treating those symptoms, which yes, you want to do, but also understand what the cause is sometimes can also just cause relief. Like you might have hormonal fluctuations. They might be uncomfortable, but if you understood where they're coming from, you might be able to deal with them better than being like, "Oh my god, why do I get like this every month?"
Yep. That's such a good point. That one size fits all, I think it hurts more than helps,
Mm.
despite what the intentions may be. And that's a good segue into talking about testosterone, I think. Testosterone is really gaining a lot of momentum, popularity. I don't know if that's because of social media or other things, but I think it's fair to say that testosterone is not only a male hormone, women have it too. Testosterone can play a role in our energy, motivation, confidence, sexual desire. And yes, it is true that as we age, both men and women will experience some decline. It's not precipitous. I think a lot of the social media influencers sometimes they kind of make you think that, oh, your testosterone is going to fall off
Right.
the cliff and you're going to be sluggish and you're not going to be able to problem solve anything. I think that's a little bit dramatic. I don't know if I kind of buy into that. But some women will say, oh, I do feel less sharp. I do feel, a little bit foggy, or I'm not thinking as quickly as I used to think. That does not necessarily mean it's only because of testosterone. So that's an important piece that
Right.
we really want to make sure that we address. And yes, it's important that people are now having these conversations and that there is a growing interest, but we have to individualize care, especially because treating someone with testosterone, there are some pretty serious side effects and pretty negative consequences that are not reversible. So that's my safety disclaimer right there. And testosterone is not going to fix everything. And we have to look at other hormones in the body. Another big player, cortisol. I mean, you probably talk about cortisol and stress all the time with patients.
I do. And I'm going to get into that. I also want to go back and just say, too, that if we are changing all these different hormones in our body and you start, let's say, HRT and you have the estrogen, you have the progesterone, and then you're trying to change testosterone. If you have so many variables, you also won't know which is doing what and why you're feeling better. So it is important to, less is more at first and start slow. I think also, and maybe I know you're the doctor here, but I believe, just like with, psychiatric medication, starting on lower doses of things and building up if you have to. But especially for people who are going to feel that those fluctuations, those hormonal fluctuations quickly, starting slow and letting your body adjust and seeing what you need before you start putting all these new things into your body.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important again if you're taking medication that addresses these, or you're using any form of hormonal therapy. Totally agree. I will very often start one at a time because you don't know what's working and not working. And then you don't know how that one addition or that, second addition is going to impact everything else. Right.
Right.
So it's not one size fits all. We keep saying
No.
it's really true.
Right. Your doctors, your hormones, all of it. So, cortisol is our main stress hormone. It is not a bad one, though. We need it, right? We talked about using it for sleep, for waking up in the morning. We talked about that in our sleep episode. It's also used for focus. We need it to respond to challenges. The issue that we are basically faced with today, though, is that our stress system has evolved to keep us alive from immediate danger, meaning we see a perceived threat, our body reacts, it releases cortisol. It goes into a quick fight or flight mode. Our body is prepared to run,
Yep.
fight, whatever that threat is. We react, and then the system is supposed to turn off quickly. The threat is
Right.
supposed to be gone, and we're out of the way, out of harm's way, and the problem's supposed to be done. However, we have not evolved to have our cortisol levels react to the constant modern stress that we are all going through, and many of us are going through day to day. So, cortisol is wonderful in quick emergencies, but it wasn't built for our group chats and our deadlines and our 24/7 stress that we experience. And so, as I like to tell my clients, when we are activated, our body hasn't evolved enough to know that if we're, running late for our child's dance class, or there's a tiger coming around the corner, the amount of cortisol your body is releasing is the same. And our reaction is the same. We're going into the same fight or flight, even though clearly one can be a lot more harmful than the other. And so we end up in this chronically elevated cortisol state. And then we feel that's at you feel activated. It's uncomfortable. And you're in this constant fight, flight, freeze mode, which is doesn't feel good, right? Like you know what I'm talking about, right? That like in your bones, your shoulder. Sometimes I say, your shoulders are up. My dad used to say, you wear your shoulders as earrings because you're
Yeah.
like like all tight, and we're overly activated. And that's tied to like ongoing stress and poor sleep, burnout. It contributes to ongoing anxiety, irritability, emotional exhaustion, feeling, constantly on the edge, all the things that usually end up being the cause. I would say 90% of the cause of what bring people into my office.
Yeah.
Um, from this constant activated state that there actually isn't a real threat all the time.
Right.
Sometimes there is, of course, but our bodies are so used to being in that state from our high cortisol levels that we actually just don't know how to
Com
reduce it anymore.
Yeah, I sometimes will tell my husband, like, I'm on all the time. Like, like,
Yeah,
on those really, crazy busy days that are really chaotic, you're just getting inundated with messages and meetings and this and places to be. And like you said, cortisol is important, but when we're always on, when we're
yeah,
always activated, it becomes maladaptive.
right.
And I can't say that, a, a number or an amount of cortisol equals like high stress, medium, low. It doesn't really, it's not linear like that.
No,
But the amount of cortisol can reflect how much stress your body is carrying. I can't say like level 5 equals medium stress, right? I wish it was that simple. And it's also like context. It's how these hormones play a role or play with our mood, right? Like, I'm sure you address that too with clients all the time.
right, right, and with cortisol as well, it's supposed to be, goes in your brain releases some, it's in your body, and it's supposed to just be processed through and be done.
Mhm.
Right? It's not supposed to just hang out in our
Yeah.
body, and it's not good for us, it's not good for your organs, it's not supposed to just be, like, there all the time.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be a quick response, again, a quick emergency. But unfortunately, then when we're overly activated, and that impacts our mood.
Yeah.
And so switching gears for a moment, talking about mood a little, and we'll tie the two together back with hormones. But when we talk about mood, we're talking about our brain's overall emotional baseline, not that moment to moment feelings that come and go, but that overall baseline of mostly how you're feeling. And our moods are affected by so many things. It's, yes, by hormone swings and fluctuations, but also changes in our behaviors like our eating and our exercising. Movement, I think, is important. Sleeping, our sexuality, our overall health. And here we go. Life stressors is a big one. Big life stressors, things that are happening absolutely is going to impact our mood.
Totally. We don't live in a bubble. And we know that there's particular moments in our lives that are going to be more or less stressful, like the birth of a child, a change in your relationship status, new job, promotion, getting fired. But classically, from my perspective and working with patients, one of these big windows is the perimenopausal transition. And sometimes patients that have had this history of maybe it is depression or some sort of anxiety component or just having a stressful life baseline because of their job or life or what have you. Sometimes those are the individuals that will experience a worsening or a negative worsening or a negative change when those life moments happen. Let's say you had depression in your 20s and then, you go through your life, things happen. And then I don't know, in your mid to late 40s, you are going through perimenopause. Like those are the women who may experience depression again or a worsening of their baseline depression. We have this old kind of adage in medicine, like a risk factor is any for any condition is a prior history of said condition, right? You had a heart attack once, guess what? You're at higher risk of having a heart attack again. You had depression once, you're at higher risk of having depression again. It doesn't have to be, all doom and gloom. It just means that like, hey, you know yourself, this is what you went through in a different part of or a time in your life. A change is coming. What can we do, or what can I do for myself to navigate that change a little bit more gracefully? I think that's an important thing to bear in mind.
I mean, the piece of risk factors as well, same in
Yeah.
mental health. And even just going through major life changes and events, there's an entire diagnostic area called adjustment disorder where there will be, not to get too nitty gritty here, but there are disorders that, like, I don't want to say mimic, but instead of diagnosing someone with depression or anxiety, the symptoms mimic the symptoms of anxiety in the DSM or depression in the DSM, but it's not full blown anxiety or full blown depression because it's within this small period of time that happens after like a major life change, like graduation or having a new baby or whatever it is. And so those major life changes really can impact our life and our moods and such. And so now add on midlife womanhood and hormone, and we're in the peak of all of these changes. You have women who could be in postpartum and breastfeeding. In your 30s to 40s, you have cycle changes, there's perimenopause, there's the sandwich generation of you have the caregiver stress, you have career pressures. Oh my God, I'm getting activated as I'm thinking about this. Um, take a deep breath. Sleep deprivation, and as you are going through your cougar puberty,
Yep.
as you called it in one of our other episodes, your children who are also going through puberty, which just seems unfair that everyone should be going through hormonal changes at the same time. So, I mean, God bless the women who have daughters who get their period at the same time that they have their period, and you have everyone PMSing, home at the same time. It's a lot of changes, and then culturally, women aren't always given permission to say this is hard and I need support. We don't always offer villages.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that we're navigating our changes the same way our children or people other people in our family are navigating their changes. We're all connected and it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. Let's say you get your cycle when another woman in your household or teenage girl, whatever, gets her cycle. It doesn't have to be a negative. We have this like stereotype that it's like you're going to be an unpleasant person to be around. What
Right.
if it was different and you were just like, yeah, I'm expecting to see my menstrual period. It's not the greatest time for me, so I'm going to dial back on like work or meetings or school stuff.
Yes.
I have started to do that in my life and it has made a huge impact in how I show up for myself. What it is. It's like showing up for yourself when you know you have this stuff going on, when you're juggling all of the things
Yes.
and you might not have that village or you might not have that day off. Like, what can you say no to? Because the hormones are going to fluctuate. You can't tell your body to not cycle, it's going to happen. You
Right.
can't tell your body not to go through perimenopause. If you left alone, it's going to happen. And when hormones change, the emotional load that you may be carrying feels heavier. And I'm just saying, okay, let's plan for that heavy moment. You have the capacity to do that.
And I think as well, and I know this is something that I've done, no more hiding tampons,
Mm.
guys. Leave your stuff out. Let the men and the boys in your home.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? These are tampons and cool. They are now a box on the kitchen island because I took them out of the bag and that's where they're living until they go upstairs. And this is part of my life. This is part of what I experience. And so you're going to know what it is. And I like that. I think that's a really valid point that we also get to change the narrative of it. It's
Yeah.
not like, oh, this awful thing. Yes. I mean, it's very frustrating, but we've also dealt with it for months of our lives.
The majority of our life.
Right. Exactly. So, if you're dealing with it and you're home or, you and your wife, you and your partner, you and your daughter, whomever it is, you know what? If your periods they're syncing up and you're cool, maybe you all should be laying on the sofa together with your blanket and your, Haagen-Dazs and your spoon. I don't know. Make it a happy, we're going to all do this together.
Yeah, like there's a way to embrace the changes and you can support yourself. And even though we could accept that yes, these conditions can change, maybe even worsen, there are ways, to get the support. Like if you know the second half of your cycle, you feel XYZ, let's plan for that. Like
Right.
what would it look like if you could and then
Yes.
I could see like the weight like coming off of people. And it's a really
Yeah.
awesome engage like conversation to have when we get to explain to patients and clients like what's going on with them, what can you do for yourself? Like you said before, like just understanding is like half the battle.
Yeah. When women are in general so good at white knuckling.
Yeah.
We are the best. And
Yep.
when you explain to someone or teach someone or give them permission to not do that anymore, that they don't have to white knuckle things anymore, it's like first of all, for some people, like you're saying, it's like, "What? I don't understand." But also such a relief because the anxiety, the stress, the overactivation, the cortisol, everything we've talked about. Yes, there's a lot we can't control, right? Like, I'm not controlling what my estrogen and progesterone right now in my body are doing. I can promise you that. But I can control some of my cortisol reactions. If I'm not sleeping great, my anxiety is not going to be great. I guarantee I'm going to be activated. My cortisol is going to be doing a lot of stuff I don't want it to be doing the next day. My hot flashes, if I'm getting them at night, that's going to mess with my sleep. That's when I need to talk to a doctor and work on changing, my hormones and such. So it's important to, what are your lifestyle changes? What are the things you can control? What are the things you can't control? And I hate to say that too. Like, I hate to be like, oh, what are the things in your control and not in your control? Um, but truly, if there are things that you can change, that you don't have to white knuckle,
Yeah.
go to therapy, go to the doctor, take care of yourself. Because again, this midlife stage, things are getting infinitely harder, some
Right.
of these things, and some of them are not going to be in your control. You're not able to control whether or not you're going to get a hot flash unless you're working on getting different hormones put into your body.
Right, right. And I think that's sometimes where things get confusing because women, either they don't offer this information or they don't feel comfortable talking to the people in their world and they've either been dismissed or they're afraid of getting dismissed. And we just have to acknowledge that hormonal changes can not only trigger your anxiety or depression, but they can also worsen a pre-existing condition.
Yes.
They can worsen a pre-existing physiologic condition. And treating mood doesn't mean we ignore hormones, and treating hormones doesn't mean we ignore mood or mental health, right? They all are kind of intertwined, right? They're all connected in a good way. I think we should take advantage of the fact that they're related.
Right. We don't have to choose one or the other, guys.
Yeah.
Like, this is not black and white thinking. And we get stuck in that. People get stuck in that. It's a coping mechanism, right? We learned it somewhere that has to be one or the other, or all or nothing. But you can be experiencing hormonal fluctuations and also deal with a major depressive disorder.
Yeah.
And it's important to have a good therapist. It's important to have a good psychiatrist if you need for medication. It's important to have your good gynecologist, have people who will listen to you. Again, if they aren't, go back and listen to our episode on how to be heard at the doctor. But it doesn't have to be one or the other. And it's important that you are communicating your needs and, you know, getting the help that you need.
Absolutely. I think getting things out in the open and crossing that discomfort to just share what you're going through is so important. It can be so powerful, so liberating. It can be a tool. Conversation is a tool. And
Right.
like we said, it's not one right answer. There are options. Hormone therapy, we touched on it a little bit. It can help mood symptoms for some women in the menopause transition, but it really still needs to be individualized.
Right.
And other workup or other medication or medication titration is also important. Non hormonal medications, antidepressants, SSRIs or SNRIs, those classes of medications can also be used for women suffering with PMS or PMDD. I think there's less of a stigma now when we talk about these medications, but it's still important to have a frank discussion, because they can
Yeah.
be very beneficial. They're not without side effects, but again, we have to look at them comprehensively.
Also important to find a good psychiatrist. And I'm going to say this here. If you go in to talk to a psychiatrist and you have a 10-minute intake and they're giving you medication, I don't want to say run, but that is such a flag, you
Yeah.
guys. This is someone who's supposed to get so much history from you. So reach out. We got great people that we can refer
Oh, yeah.
to. If you have a therapist, your therapist should already have people they refer to. If you have a good gynecologists, they should have people that they refer to. Again, this is about forming your team. But yes, you can certainly, a lot of this can be treated with good medication. And I always say, with the medication will help reduce symptoms. And when the symptoms are reduced, you can really start working on the patterns of behavior with therapy.
Absolutely.
There's so many different modalities of therapy. Honestly, you need a safe place to go and to speak. I believe the modality isn't as important. I know a lot of people, therapists right now, are like, no, Dana, it is important. But the person you're working with and knowing that you feel safe and you trust the therapist, to me, is way more important than the type of therapy they're doing.
Sure.
If you feel that you get good support and good advice and good feedback and someone who helps you recognize your patterns and breaks those patterns, especially when it comes to hormones, you can't stop the fluctuations. You can't stop the feelings. But if someone helps you with the tools to prepare for them, to know what to do as you're feeling them, and then what to do as you're coming out of them, you can do that with all different modalities.
Yeah.
But if you can work with someone who you trust and you feel comfortable with, reducing your emotional overload and setting those boundaries and making sure you're getting good sleep and stress reduction that's practical. And if a therapist can help you work on all of that, then great, you found someone good.
Yeah. We just have to start somewhere to
Right.
understand what's going on. I think a lot of times patients will, or women out there will have symptoms and then they kind of get amplified based on what they're looking at on their phones and social media. Social media's job is to keep us engaged on social media.
Yes, it is.
We talked a little bit about sleep in prior episodes and a little bit today. But one of the things that I hear a lot, and I think it's important to clear up a little bit too, is brain fog, concentration, memory. And these, yes, can also be related to hormones and moods or a little bit of both. Almost half the
Yeah.
women I see in their 40s and 50s will talk about something in this realm. And it can feel really scary. And people get concerned and then they come to me because of that, right? Because of the fear that, oh my gosh, am I losing my memory? Is this dementia? And if fear is a very powerful motivator.
Yeah.
And there are tools and strategies I share. We talk about some lifestyle changes and where medication can be helpful. Medication is just one part of the care. And when we
Right.
talk about mood changes and sleep, I'm sure you have tons of advice that you could share. If you could give like a little take two about, all the things we talked about today, what would you say? What would you share with our listeners?
I feel like it was educational to
Mhm.
learn about all the hormones for me. So I think the most important piece for me would be tying into our episode on, what to say to a doctor and
Yeah.
advocating for yourself. I think it's really important to be heard. And if something doesn't feel right, like you said, if you're crying at the end of your cycle, or if there's something that feels very clockwork or it seems like a pattern, you're like, I've noticed that on this day of my cycle, for the last 6 months, this is how I'm feeling or this is happening. Really stick with that and go with your gut. That is not made up.
Mhm.
And don't let someone gaslight you. And make sure that you are sticking up for yourself and advocating for yourself. And don't take no for an answer. Make sure that you're heard and being treated for whatever that is that you're saying you are feeling and you are experiencing because things that are random don't happen the same time every month.
Like clockwork.
Right. Like clockwork. Exactly. So, how about you?
Just want to drive home the point that you made. Like if something feels heavier or harder than it should, lean into it, unpack
Yeah.
it, get support around it. So important to trust yourself. And that, when you have those hard moments, whether it's a hormonal shift or a mood change, it's not a personal failure. Your hormones are just telling you something's up. We may or may not be able to push through this. And it's a signal. Hormones tell us when it's time to eat, sleep, really these basic primitive functions. And understanding those signals is how you can move forward from being dismissed to meaningful support. So, bridging off of what you said, trust your gut, lean into your intuition, and understanding the signals is the first step in living better with the signals.
I think that this episode, I mean, it touches on lots of things,
Mhm.
but for me in particular, and for most women who enter perimenopause, there's so many changes. Like you talked about the brain fog and how frightening that can be. I know that's something that when I started experiencing it, it's like, wow, what is happening? Like I'm forgetting what I'm saying mid sentence. That has not happened before. And I'm forgetting words, names for things. Like this feels really weird.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the power of social media can be positive as well. It wasn't until I saw a midlife mother making a joke where she's yelling at her children and using the wrong words for everything, that I was like, oh my God, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
Like, this is normal. Because I didn't know about that yet. So to recognize these are hormones, these are real, these are things that we all experience, and to understand that you're not alone. Ladies out there, you're not alone. It's okay. You're going through it. Talk to your friends. Share this with them if you think this is going to help them. Body's responding. This is real stuff, real transition. We're going through it also. Again, part of the reason that we wanted to start this
Yep.
is because there was nothing else like this out there. And we said, well, we have to do this. We have to put this information out there because it's real. It can be funny, but it can also be really scary. And I don't know. I think this episode and the topics of hormone to me feels more sensitive and more triggering to me as well, of stuff that I've gone through. And so we don't have to white knuckle it. You don't have to push through this alone. And I just think it's really important that we as women help each other out and motivate each other and talk about this stuff. So you just don't feel so isolated and alone.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a really great point to end on. If you're a woman listening and you've ever felt like I don't feel like myself, or this isn't right, or isn't my emotions, or isn't my hormones, and you're just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Drop us a comment, shoot us a message. Let's talk about it. Ask your questions, and hopefully we can, address them in an episode, or because there are options. There's ways to, navigate these challenges that we all face. But, now we're winding down.
Yes.
And as much as we can stay here and chat all afternoon, we gotta get back to work and the house and the life and the things.
Yes. And the school pickups.
Oh yeah.
So
Because when you're doing it all.
I know there are no sick days.
We'll see you next week, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. No Sick Days is for information and education only. It is not medical or mental health treatment. Listening to this podcast does not create a medical or therapeutic relationship. Please talk to a qualified professional for care that is right for you.